The Deathworlders' confidence. In the vast stretches of space, there was a group of beings known as the Deathworlders. These creatures came from planets where survival was a constant struggle. The worlds they called home were harsh, filled with dangers like storms, wild beasts, and deadly environments. But the Deathworlders had adapted to it all. Over generations, they became strong, resilient, and almost unstoppable. They believed that no one in the galaxy could challenge their power. The Deathworlders had conquered many planets, defeating species that dared to oppose them. They had crushed countless enemies, using their strength, speed, and fierce minds to dominate everything in their path. As time went on, they grew more and more confident in their superiority. They called themselves the Deathworlders because they had come from the most dangerous, most deadly planets in the universe. And they wore the title proudly. They were feared by all who knew them. Their reputation had spread far and wide. Across the galaxy, other species whispered about the terrifying power of the Deathworlders. Their ships were massive, their warriors terrifying. Entire fleets had tried to challenge them, but none had succeeded. No one had been able to stand against them, and it seemed like nothing could stop their rise. The Deathworlders were not just powerful physically. Their intelligence was sharp, and they had mastered advanced technology. Their ships could travel across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single strike. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and kill with precision. To the Deathworlders, they were the perfect beings, and they were sure that they would rule the galaxy forever. But despite their unmatched strength, there was something that the Deathworlders never fully understood: how they could have underestimated other species. After all, their worlds were so dangerous, their enemies so many, and yet they never stopped surviving, thriving, and conquering. They had faced so much, and still, they had never met their match. Or so they thought. One day, however, something strange happened. A new species was discovered, one that had never been encountered before. The Deathworlders had heard of them, but dismissed them as nothing more than another weak, insignificant species, just another group of creatures struggling to survive in the vastness of space. This new species was called humanity. At first, the Deathworlders didn't think much of it. The humans were weak by their standards. Their technology was primitive compared to the Deathworlders' advanced weapons and ships. Their home planet, Earth, was not even close to being as dangerous as the Deathworlders' worlds. It was a peaceful, blue world full of life, but no real dangers, no predators that could challenge them. The Deathworlders laughed at the idea of humans being a threat. They saw them as weak, fragile creatures, no different from the countless species they had already wiped out. They believed that they could crush the humans without even breaking a sweat. It was almost funny to them. How could such a species ever stand against the mighty Deathworlders? But as time went on, the Deathworlders noticed something odd. There was a spark in the humans that they couldn't understand. Despite their weak bodies and fragile technologies, the humans had something the Deathworlders couldn't ignore. It was their spirit. Humans weren't just surviving. They were growing. They were learning. Every challenge they faced, they learned from it and adapted. Their scientists created new inventions, and their warriors developed new tactics. It wasn't their strength that made them dangerous, but their ability to outsmart, outthink, and outlast their enemies. They fought with determination, with passion, with something the Deathworlders couldn't understand. This puzzled the Deathworlders. They had always been the strongest. They had always been the ones who dominated every planet, every species. But now, here were these fragile humans who were not giving up. They were pushing back. The Deathworlders couldn't help but wonder, how could such weak creatures have the strength to fight back? As the Deathworlders prepared for their first real encounter with humanity, they continued to be confident. They knew they would defeat the humans easily, just like they had defeated so many others before. But deep inside, a small seed of doubt began to grow. Was humanity truly as weak as they thought? Or had they underestimated them in the same way they had underestimated so many other species in the past? And so, the stage was set. The Deathworlders, sure of their victory, faced the humans, thinking it would be an easy fight. But what they didn't realize was that this would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. They were about to meet a species that would change their view of strength forever. The Deathworlders had been confident, but they were about to learn the hard way that there were things in the galaxy that even they couldn't predict. And humanity. Humanity had only just begun to show what they were truly capable of. The arrival of humanity. For eons, the galaxy had been shaped by the Deathworlders. Their strength and unmatched power had set the standard for what it meant to be dominant in the universe. No species had dared challenge them for fear of facing utter destruction. Yet, in the vastness of space, there came a force that would change everything. Humanity, a relatively young species by galactic standards, was about to step onto the stage of this intergalactic drama. The Deathworlders had never heard of humans, and when news spread that a species from a peaceful, unremarkable planet was advancing into space, they scoffed at the idea. Earth, their home, was a world full of life, but it wasn't a place where deadly creatures roamed the land or deadly storms ravaged the sky. Earth was a calm world, a stark contrast to the hostile and dangerous planets the Deathworlders had grown accustomed to. To them, the humans were no more than a curious species, primitive, fragile, and easy to ignore. But humanity had something the Deathworlders didn't understand. They had something deeper than technology, something more vital than strength, determination. Humans didn't just exist. They fought for survival in ways that none of the Deathworlders could fathom. The same way a tree learns to grow in harsh soil, humans learn to adapt, thrive, and evolve. When humanity finally made contact with the galaxy, they did so with no intentions of domination. They didn't come with mighty fleets or destructive weapons, but with curiosity and a burning desire to explore the unknown. Their first few encounters with other species were peaceful, seeking trade, knowledge, and collaboration. But the Deathworlders took notice. While the humans did not appear to pose a direct threat, their rapid expansion into space caught the attention of many. They seemed to be everywhere, advancing faster than any other species. They built ships capable of traveling vast distances, constructed colonies on distant planets, and began exploring the edges of the known universe. At first, the Deathworlders saw this as an inconvenience. Their superiority was beyond question, and a species like humanity, with their soft bodies and weak technologies, could never be a true threat. But their growth was too fast to ignore. Humanity was on a path that was impossible to stop. The Deathworlders decided it was time to deal with this new species, dismissing them as a minor obstacle. They sent their scouts to make contact. If humanity would not submit peacefully, the Deathworlders were ready to remind them of their place in the galaxy, beneath the Deathworlders. But as the scouts made their approach, something strange happened. The humans were prepared. They didn't just roll over at the sight of the Deathworlder ships. They reacted in ways that were unexpected. They didn't simply retreat in fear. Instead, they responded with calm determination and strategy. The Deathworlders were puzzled. How could these humans, with their primitive technology, stand up against them? They didn't have the massive warships, the advanced weapons, or the military strength that the Deathworlders had. So why were the humans not afraid? In their first meeting with humanity, the Deathworlders demanded submission. They told the humans that their place in the galaxy had been decided long ago, that they were nothing but ants in the face of the Deathworlders' unstoppable power. The message was clear: bow down or face annihilation. But humanity did not bow. They didn't even flinch. Instead, they responded with something the Deathworlders were not expecting: defiance. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive. Their strength didn't come from their weapons alone, but from the unity they shared, from their ability to learn and adapt at a pace that no other species could match. The Deathworlders had misjudged them. They thought humanity would crumble under pressure. Instead, they fought back. not with force, but with intelligence, determination, and courage. The Deathworlders were surprised. They expected the humans to surrender, but instead, the humans were making demands of their own. They wanted peace, but they wanted respect in return. The Deathworlders didn't understand this strange form of resistance. To them, it was a sign of weakness. But the humans didn't back down. They had seen the Deathworlders' cruelty, their dominance over other species, and humanity wasn't about to let that happen again. The Deathworlders had expected an easy victory, but humanity had already shown that they wouldn't be crushed that easily. The Deathworlders had thought they were unmatched, but now they were beginning to realize that humanity was no ordinary species. This was not a fight that could be won with brute strength alone. Humanity had something more. They had hope. They had courage. And the Deathworlders had only just begun to realize that they were facing something unlike anything they had ever encountered. The seeds of a great conflict had been planted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The first encounter. The Deathworlders, once so sure of their invincibility, now faced something unexpected. Humanity's defiance had caught them off guard, but they still believed that, when it came down to it, they were unstoppable. They were ready to teach this weak, defiant species a lesson they would never forget. The humans, however, had different plans. They weren't foolish enough to think they could match the Deathworlders in raw strength or advanced weaponry, but they had something far more powerful: their adaptability. Humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to learn quickly, to use its environment, to think on its feet. They didn't fight like the Deathworlders, ferocious and without hesitation. Instead, they fought with precision, strategy, and an understanding that sometimes survival didn't come from fighting harder. It came from fighting smarter. The Deathworlders' first strike against humanity came suddenly, a brutal assault on a human colony just outside the outer rim of their star system. They unleashed their weapons, expecting to see the humans cower, to watch as their fragile cities crumbled beneath the might of Deathworlder forces. But something was different. When the Deathworlder fleet arrived, they were met not by fleeing civilians but by a force they hadn't anticipated. A mix of humans defending their homes with determination and quick thinking. The humans didn't engage in a battle they couldn't win head-on. Instead, they used their environment to their advantage. Cities that once appeared weak and exposed became traps for the invading forces. The humans had set up decoys, clever ambushes, and traps in ways the Deathworlders had never seen before. The Deathworlders initially laughed at the humans' tactics. But then, things began to change. What seemed like random chaos was, in fact, a well-thought-out plan. The Deathworlders' advanced technology, their immense power, was being outwitted by a species they had dismissed as weak. A key moment in the battle came when the Deathworlders sent in their elite warriors to wipe out the last human resistance in one of the colonies. These warriors were trained for one purpose: to kill anything that moved. No one had ever been able to withstand their attacks. But this time, the humans didn't run. Instead, they fought back using guerrilla tactics, setting up traps that neutralized the Deathworlders' superior strength and numbers. One of the Deathworlder warriors, a seasoned veteran known for his brutality, led an assault against a group of human soldiers who were trapped in a building. The humans, knowing they couldn't overpower him directly, used the building's architecture to their advantage. They set off hidden explosives, causing the structure to collapse around him. The warrior barely escaped, wounded but alive. It was a small victory for humanity, but it was enough to send a shockwave through the Deathworlder forces. The Deathworlders were stunned. These humans were fighting with a resourcefulness that should not have been possible. They were fighting like survivors, not warriors, and that made them unpredictable. As the battle raged on, the humans didn't just fight back. They adapted. They modified their tactics on the fly, learned from every mistake, and used whatever they could to gain the upper hand. They even managed to disable a few of the Deathworlder ships using makeshift technology. The Deathworlder ships, so advanced and powerful, were now vulnerable to attacks they hadn't prepared for. By the time the Deathworlders finally decided to retreat, they were bewildered. They had come expecting to crush the humans with ease, but what they found was a species that refused to be crushed. The humans hadn't won the battle, but they had made their point clear. They could survive. They could resist. This was a turning point for the Deathworlders. They had underestimated humanity, and now they had learned a valuable lesson. Strength alone wouldn't guarantee victory. The Deathworlders had always relied on brute force to win, but the humans had shown them that intelligence, creativity, and survival instinct could be just as dangerous. The retreating Deathworlder fleet was haunted by the realization that humanity, in all its so-called fragility, had done something no other species had done before: forced them to pull back. For the first time in their long history, the Deathworlders were not certain of their victory. They had not been beaten, but they had not been invincible either. The humans had proven they were not to be underestimated. They had fought with everything they had, and the Deathworlders were left with the uncomfortable truth that their past conquests had not been as certain as they had believed. As the first encounter came to an end, the galaxy's balance had shifted. The Deathworlders, once proud of their unmatched power, now faced a question they never thought they would have to ask. What if they weren't as invincible as they thought? Humanity had made its mark, and the Deathworlders knew that things would never be the same again. Humanity's hidden strength. The Deathworlders had always prided themselves on their strength. They were creatures of sheer power, born from planets where survival meant being the strongest, the fastest, the deadliest. And for centuries, they had been just that, undefeated and unstoppable. But with every encounter, every skirmish with humanity, they began to realize that brute force alone wouldn't win this war. After the first clash, the Deathworlders had underestimated humanity. They saw humans as weak, fragile, and unworthy of any real attention. But the humans, despite their physical limitations, had shown an uncanny ability to resist, adapt, and fight with a determination the Deathworlders hadn't expected. The first wave of humanity's resistance had been just the beginning. The humans didn't just survive the first battle. They learned from it. Their soldiers, engineers, and strategists worked tirelessly to improve their defenses, develop better weapons, and devise new tactics. They studied the Deathworlders' strengths and weaknesses, quickly adapting to their enemies' methods. Humanity's true strength lay in its ability to innovate, to constantly evolve. Unlike the Deathworlders, whose tactics were often based on pure power and ancient traditions, humanity was driven by a relentless desire to grow, to improve, to overcome. This hidden strength had been overlooked by the Deathworlders, but it was becoming clearer with every passing day. In the wake of their retreat, the Deathworlders thought they could regroup and destroy the humans once and for all. But humanity had already begun to fight smarter, not harder. They used the time between battles to study the Deathworlders' technology, their weapons, and their strategies. They built countermeasures and developed entirely new approaches to warfare. They didn't just fight back. They created new ways to survive, new ways to turn the tide. One of humanity's most surprising innovations came in the form of their communication technology. The Deathworlders, with their advanced ships and superior weapons, assumed they had the upper hand in every battle. But what they didn't realize was that humanity had developed a network of communication that allowed them to coordinate on a scale the Deathworlders hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about sending orders. It was about sharing intelligence in real time, instantly adapting to any situation, and outsmarting the Deathworlders at every turn. In one crucial engagement, humanity used their new tech to spread misinformation and confusion within the Deathworlder ranks. Their advanced ships, once seen as unbeatable, were now vulnerable to simple tricks. The humans' ability to hide their true intentions, to make the Deathworlders believe they were in one location when they were actually somewhere else, allowed them to gain a strategic advantage. It wasn't a victory of strength, It was a victory of intelligence and creativity. But humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their clever tricks. It was in their unity. When faced with overwhelming odds, humans didn't falter. They stood together. The Deathworlders had always relied on fear and domination to maintain control, but the humans showed something far more powerful: resilience. Each time the Deathworlders thought they had broken humanity, the humans rose again, united in their resolve. A defining moment came when a Deathworlder strike force attempted to destroy a vital human colony on the edge of their territory. The Deathworlders thought this would be the final blow. They would annihilate the humans, break their spirit, and prove once and for all that they were the superior species. But humanity fought back with everything they had. The humans didn't have the firepower to match the Deathworlders head-to-head, but they had something far more valuable: their ability to sacrifice, to protect their own, to fight for each other. In the face of overwhelming odds, a group of human soldiers, armed with nothing but their wits and their courage, staged a daring counterattack that delayed the Deathworlders long enough for reinforcements to arrive. This act of bravery wasn't just a small victory, it was a turning point. The Deathworlders, watching from afar, began to realize that humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for each other, for their homes, and for their future. And that made them dangerous in ways the Deathworlders couldn't understand. As the humans continued to adapt and grow, the Deathworlders found themselves questioning their own beliefs. They had always relied on fear, on power, on domination. But now, they were faced with a species that fought not just with weapons, but with heart and mind. And that, the Deathworlders realized, was a kind of strength they could never match. Humanity had shown them their true power, not through force, but through determination, intelligence, and unity. The Deathworlders had thought that they were the ultimate species in the galaxy, but humanity was proving them wrong. The war was no longer just about strength. It was about who had the will to survive, who had the courage to keep fighting, and who had the heart to never give up. Humanity's hidden strength was now out in the open, and the Deathworlders were left wondering if they had made a mistake they couldn't fix. The turning point. The Deathworlders had always believed in one thing: no matter the odds, no matter the challenge, their strength would always carry them through. Their weapons, their ships, their sheer force of will, they were invincible, or so they thought. But now, for the first time, they found themselves on the defensive, forced to retreat and reassess their strategy. Humanity had defied all expectations, and it was starting to dawn on the Deathworlders that they were not facing an ordinary species. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, its creativity, and most of all, its refusal to back down. It wasn't just the battles themselves. It was the way the humans fought, the way they turned every challenge into an opportunity for growth. Every mistake was a lesson, every loss a step closer to victory. The first sign of humanity's true potential came during a key engagement in a small sector of space. The Deathworlders, still convinced of their inevitable victory, launched an all-out attack on a human stronghold. The humans had no illusions about the power of their enemies. They knew they couldn't defeat the Deathworlders head-on, but they didn't need to. Using the knowledge they had gathered in previous encounters, the humans set a trap, one that would force the Deathworlders into a position where their own strength became their greatest weakness. The Deathworlders, confident in their military might, walked right into the humans' plan. The trap was set in the form of a seemingly defenseless human outpost. The Deathworlders, eager to crush the humans once and for all, sent in their best fleet to finish the job. But as the Deathworlders approached, the humans activated a hidden defense system, an intricate network of mines, energy shields, and decoy ships that disabled the Deathworlder fleet's most powerful ships. The Deathworlders, who had once thought they were above any kind of subterfuge, were now on the back foot. Their most advanced technology, their pride, was turned against them. The humans, using only their wits and their adaptability, had completely shifted the balance of the battle. It was a turning point, The Deathworlders had underestimated the humans once more, but now they couldn't ignore them. Humanity had not only outsmarted them, but they had also shown the universe something the Deathworlders had never seen before: the power of a species that would never give up, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. As the battle unfolded, the Deathworlders realized that humanity was not just surviving. They were thriving. Every setback had only made them stronger. Every failure only fueled their desire to push further. The humans weren't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for something much greater: their future, their homes, their right to exist in a galaxy that once seemed destined to be ruled by the Deathworlders. For the first time, the Deathworlders began to understand what made humanity so dangerous. It wasn't their technology, their numbers, or their weapons. It was their heart. Humans were not just warriors. They were builders, thinkers, dreamers. They could adapt to any situation, learn from any failure, and fight with a strength that came from within. The humans had made their point. They were not going to be crushed. They were not going to be conquered. They were going to fight, and they were going to win. And as the Deathworlders reeled from the shock of their first major defeat, they had to face a chilling truth. Humanity was not the insignificant species they had once thought. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Deathworlders' pride had been shattered. Their confidence had been replaced with doubt. Could they really defeat this new enemy? Could they really win a war against a species that refused to be broken? A species that fought not only with strength but with something deeper, something that made them impossible to defeat. As the battle raged on, the Deathworlders realized that the war was no longer about who was stronger. It was about who had the will to keep going, no matter the cost. And humanity, it seemed, had that will in abundance. The turning point had come, and there was no going back. The Deathworlders had been forced to face a new reality. They were not the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. And humanity was just getting started. Humanity's rise. The galaxy had always been a place of ruthless conquest. Species rose, fought, and fell, with the strongest often taking control of the stars. But humanity, a species once dismissed as weak and insignificant, had begun to shift the tides of power. The Deathworlders, who had believed their dominance was unchallenged, now found themselves questioning everything they had once known to be true. After the surprising victories and countless skirmishes, humanity was no longer just a fleeting presence in the galaxy. They had proven their resilience, their ability to outthink and outlast even the mightiest of foes. But now, they were doing something no one had expected. They were uniting. In the face of the Deathworlders' fury, humanity had rallied together. The different factions, once scattered and divided by political borders, had come together with one singular goal: survival. No longer was humanity divided by their own petty conflicts. In this fight, they were one, and the Deathworlders could not ignore their unity. Across the galaxy, human fleets began to move in coordination, their tactics more refined, their technology evolving at a pace the Deathworlders could not keep up with. The humans had gone from simple survival to a force capable of challenging the Deathworlders on every front. Their unity had become their greatest strength. Meanwhile, the Deathworlders, despite their overwhelming power, were beginning to feel the pressure. Their victories were becoming fewer, their losses greater. Every time they thought they had destroyed a human outpost, it seemed another one rose in its place, stronger, more fortified, more determined. Humanity's ability to adapt and rebuild was unlike anything the Deathworlders had ever encountered. The turning point came when humanity struck a decisive blow during a massive conflict on a far-off world. The Deathworlders had sent one of their largest fleets to crush a major human stronghold on a planet known for its rich resources. The Deathworlders believed this would be the final strike, the destruction of humanity's ability to continue fighting. But once again, they were wrong. Humanity had prepared. They didn't just fight to protect their world. They had learned the Deathworlders' tactics and turned them against them. The humans used the planet's terrain to their advantage, creating a series of traps and ambushes that disrupted the Deathworlders' carefully planned attack. Their fleets were scattered, their forces divided. At the heart of the battle, humanity deployed a new weapon, one that had been developed in secret, a combination of their technological advances and their ever-growing knowledge of the Deathworlders' weaknesses. With it, they disabled the Deathworlder flagship, the symbol of their power, crippling their fleet and forcing them to retreat. The Deathworlders had underestimated humanity once again, and now, for the first time, they were on the run. The victory was more than just a military win. It was a symbol of humanity's rise. No longer were they a species to be dismissed or laughed at. They had become a force in the galaxy, capable of taking on even the mightiest of enemies. The news of humanity's victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Other species, once fearful of the Deathworlders' reign, began to take notice. Some, fearing the wrath of the Deathworlders, reached out to humanity, offering alliances and support. Others, seeing humanity's growing strength, saw an opportunity to break free from the Deathworlders' tyranny. Humanity had become more than just a threat to the Deathworlders. They had become a symbol of hope for the oppressed, a beacon of resistance in a galaxy that had long been ruled by fear. The Deathworlders, for all their might, could no longer ignore the reality that humanity was no longer a small, insignificant species. They were an emerging power, and they would not be silenced. But while humanity celebrated its victories, the Deathworlders were left to lick their wounds. The defeat had struck them deeply, not just because of the loss of their fleet, but because of the realization that they were no longer the top predators in the galaxy. They had been outwitted, outmuscled, and outlasted by a species they once thought would be easy to crush. And now, with the galaxy beginning to change, the Deathworlders were forced to reckon with the one thing they could not defeat: humanity's unyielding will to rise. Humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the stars, and they were willing to do whatever it took to claim it. The Deathworlders had seen their power challenged, and they had learned a valuable lesson. This fight was far from over. The rise of humanity had begun, and the Deathworlders could no longer ignore the fact that the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The future of the galaxy. The galaxy had never been a place of peace, but now something new was stirring. A shift was happening, one that none of the old powers had anticipated. The Deathworlders, once so certain of their supremacy, were now faced with the undeniable fact that they were no longer the unrivaled rulers of the stars. And at the heart of this change was humanity. It had been a long and difficult journey, but humanity had proven that even the smallest spark of hope could turn into an unstoppable blaze. From the ashes of defeat, they had risen, and their courage, ingenuity, and unity had become their greatest weapons. The Deathworlders, for all their strength, had learned this lesson the hard way. Humanity wasn't just a species to be destroyed. It was a species that would fight, adapt, and never surrender. In the wake of their decisive victories, humanity began to forge alliances across the galaxy. Species that had once cowered under the Deathworlders' rule now sought the help of the humans. Some came in search of protection, others out of respect for humanity's rise. The Deathworlders, meanwhile, were left scrambling, realizing that their empire was no longer as invincible as it once seemed. Once a symbol of fear and terror, their name now carried with it a sense of doubt, even within their own ranks. The humans, though, did not bask in their newfound glory for long. They had already set their sights on a future far beyond the battles they had fought. While the Deathworlders struggled to maintain their grip on power, humanity began to build. They built new cities, new colonies, and new systems of governance based on cooperation rather than dominance. Their goal was not to rule over others, but to create a galaxy where species could coexist, work together, and grow. Humanity's true victory was not in the destruction of their enemies, but in the creation of something better, a future where strength was measured not by the power of one species over another, but by the collective will of all beings to live in harmony. And though it seemed impossible just a few years ago, humanity had proven that such a future was not only possible, it was worth fighting for. As humanity spread its influence across the stars, they didn't just take territory, they inspired change. They began to teach the galaxy's other species the value of unity, the strength that came from collaboration, and the importance of protecting what was truly worth fighting for: life, hope, and the future. But even as humanity built this new future, the Deathworlders could not let go of their past. The fear of losing their empire was too great, and though they had learned the hard way that they could not dominate humanity, they were not yet ready to accept that their place in the galaxy was no longer secure. Their pride, once unshakable, now had cracks in it, but they would not go down without a fight. The Deathworlders were still a powerful force, and though they had lost much, they were not entirely defeated. The galaxy was now at a crossroads. Humanity had made its mark, and its future was uncertain, but it was filled with promise. Could the Deathworlders truly change, or would they continue to fight to reclaim their former glory? And what of the other species, those who had witnessed humanity's rise? Would they join in this new era of cooperation, or would they cling to the old ways of conquest and war? The future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the strongest, but in the hands of those brave enough to create a new path forward. And for the first time in the galaxy's history, that future seemed to belong to humanity. As the stars continued to shine, one thing was certain: the death of the old order had come, and humanity was ready to lead the way into a new era, a time where no species would be crushed under the weight of tyranny, and where every voice, no matter how small, would have a chance to be heard. And so, the galaxy looked ahead, knowing that the rise of humanity was just the beginning. The Deathworlders had underestimated them once, but humanity had proven that nothing could stop them from creating a future where they, together with others, could flourish. The war was over, but the real story of the galaxy, the story of what would come next, was just beginning.